whole class feedback on the paper pencil assessments and commentary assignment that you turned in, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. It took me a while to get to it, but here it is. So there are 4 major things to keep in mind as you go forward with exam 2. 1 is alignment, 2 is coverage, 3 is goal interpretation, and 4 is the commentary. As far as alignment goes, one of the keys is to stay focused on the goals. When people made some errors within the science materials, for example, it became too much focused on animal facts or other things in the lesson rather than just on the adaptations. The goals were, in case you didn't do those or you don't remember, to make sure that students understood how adaptations help animals survive in an ecosystem, meaning how does it help it get food, how does it help to keep from being eaten, and how does it protect it from the environment itself. In some cases, there were a lot of questions that directly looked at things like predator-prey or different symbiotic relationships or ecosystems in general. And while that's part of the content, it wasn't part of the goals. They may need that as some background information, but it's not necessary to understand adaptations. And the key thing you are focused on is adaptations. Otherwise, your assessment can get way out of control really, really fast. In other cases, it was kind of focused on adaptations, but the questions were worded in a way where it became more about whether or not statements were true about animals without any direct tie to the adaptations themselves. So things like, bees carry pollen from plant to plant, or woodpecker has a short beak that's very flexible, something like that, a false statement. Those are really about the animals themselves, and I can answer that without understanding anything about adaptations. So make sure that you keep things aligned with the goal, and you ask yourself, is this really assessing what the goal is supposed to be assessing? One other example from language arts is that oftentimes there was too much focus on the information about social distancing rather than the ability to write a persuasive essay. Other issues were making sure to state at the right level of cognition. In most cases, in social studies and language arts, this was okay. In social studies, the only time it kind of went off a little bit was when examples were used from the text, when it was supposed to be a comprehension level goal. In science, there were often times where it was supposed to be a comprehension level goal, but examples that were used and described in the text were used in the assessment, and that can happen. So be very aware of what's in the materials that you're looking at, whether you're doing the ocean unit or the social studies lesson. Finally, in the science, sometimes people went a little beyond the comprehension level goal to application, where they gave them a bunch of information about a particular organism and an adaptation it might have to help it do one of those 3 things: get food, keep from being eaten, or survive the environment. And it was up to the student to pull out what those things are. And that's much more application rather than a comprehension of how that adaptation is actually helping the animal. Oftentimes that information was given to the student rather than being held back. So make sure that you stay at the right level of cognition. I know that the boundaries are sometimes fuzzy, and I will take that into consideration, of course, because, again, these are made-up categories, and the real world doesn't always fit perfectly or clearly into one or the other. The second element was coverage. And this was the biggest issue here, was that in the social studies materials, a lot of people left out the overall goal and the overall goal, in case you didn't remember, is that how did students will be able to describe or understand, comprehend how the economic and religious economic practices and religious beliefs determined or influenced the structure of Spanish society. And the sub-goals then were they need to know what Spanish society are, they need to know about what religious beliefs were, and they need to know about the economy. But that overall lesson goal is the integration of those three goals. And a lot of times that's exactly what was left out. So if there is an integrative goal, and in the social studies there is, for sure, I think that the science, depending on how you think about it, yes, that is also an integrative goal. Make sure you assess the lesson goal and don't leave it out. Don't forget about it because you're so focused on the sub-goals. Likewise, when you're looking at the sub-goals, make sure that everything's in there. If I tell you that there are 4 different compromises to look at, make sure you assess all 4. If I say that there are 3 types of ocean currents, I'm not saying that there are, but if I said there were 3, you should be talking about there should be 3 in the assessment. So keep that in mind. Finally, we have goal interpretation in the commentary. As far as goal interpretation goes, the goals I give you are the ones I want you to focus on. I want you to look at the material to understand what those goals mean, but I don't want you to fill them in anymore. Otherwise, the amount of detail gets overwhelming, and it's too easy to lose sight of the big goals of understanding ocean currents or understanding how failed compromises led to the Civil War. So keep the goals front and center when you're thinking about how to construct this assessment. Read the materials to understand what those goals mean and to create your items, but focus on the goals. Finally, as far as the commentary goes, watch the reviews because we go into a lot of depth about everything that you might consider thinking about when we are looking at those different areas of validity, reliability, and bias. As far as how I want you to write it, there's a template and some little sentence starters in the templates on Canvas. And when you go through, I want you to just go through that template once and not make a separate template for the paper pencil and the alternative, just one commentary. So when you talk about content validity, tell me what you did first in the paper pencil, tell me then what you did in the alternative assessment. If you did the exact same thing for both, just say in both the paper pencil and the alternative assessments, this is how I treated content validity. Sometimes that will be the case. Sometimes how you handle them will be totally different because it'll apply in one and not in the other, or different issues come up. So that is up to you to figure out and to tell me about, and I look forward to reading them. If you do have any other questions, I don't want any iterator reliability issues here, but I'm sure that they're going to come up. If you have any questions, let me know, and we'll figure it out. All right, good luck.